All right, hey guys. I'm gonna test this out. I'm gonna make a reaction to Salmonella. I watched him for a few years. I found him really interesting, and he can be a little crude, so fair warning. Um, but yeah, I wanted to try this out, see what you guys think. I hope you like. So I guess we'll get started. I'll pause in between, and I'll just give my opinion on things and things like that. There's no video. Sorry, I'm still not used to this whole thing yet. We're gonna learn, and I'm gonna learn with you guys, and you're gonna learn with me, and it's gonna be great, hopefully. Hope and of course.
Hey adults. So, most of us are aware of at least one animal companion to the commander in chief. All but 3 presidents have owned some kind of pet during their term, and there's good reason for that.
Now, I find that honestly really weird to think that there's been 3 presidents that have not had pets, because most families, you just kind of it's. I feel like it's pretty typical, and so and I mean, it's not like I don't think super publicized as much that the president has an animal. I know there have been some, animals that were that like certain presidents that were pretty famous. Like one example would be Andrew Jackson with his cursing parrot. That one's pretty well known. And then Thomas Jefferson had his, I believe it's Thomas Jefferson that had a goat that attacked a small boy. So I'm sure he'll get into that, but yeah, it's just weird to think of presidents that didn't have them.
Not only does a lovable mutt serve to humanize an otherwise larger than life figure, but their cute antics can also be a great distraction when needed. Huh? Drone strikes? Never heard of her. Hey, we're doing a photo op with this dog that shares a name with my vice president's son, cause that's not weird at all. But as it turns out, dogs and cats are just the tip of the iceberg. There have been a lot of quadrupedal occupants of the White House, even without Miss Lewinsky. So today we'll be going through just a few of the more interesting ones. Going back to the beginning, Washington had critters galore, including 4 black and tan slur hounds that he named Drunkard.
Okay, I was trying to pause there if you could see me struggling. But yeah, dogs are I feel like dogs and cats pretty common. Um I'm like he just said, I'm sure there's going to be some more interesting pets. I did notice the, haha, funny Lewinsky joke, but we're not going to go into that. But yeah, I mean, I guess it would be a good distraction for both country and yourself if you're doing things that maybe people wouldn't agree with as much.
Taster, Tippler, and Tipsy. They sound like if Santa's reindeer were all alcoholics, which would be a shame because Rudolph's red nose would no longer be of note. John Adams had 3 dogs that presumably spanned the alignment chart, being named.
Okay, so interesting names there, Washington. um, from what I understand, I believe he drank quite a bit, so that might have something to do with it. Why they were called that, or they were. It was just a funny joke. It's always possible.
Juno, Mark, and Satan, respectively. Not a joke.
Yeah, of
Jefferson
course.
kept around 40 sheep during his presidency, one of which was a 4-horned Shetland ram. Though nameless, said ram soon became famous for killing a young boy on White House grounds. Rather than immediately destroying the animal as we'd expect today,
Yeah, that's the story I was talking about with Jefferson and his famous ram. I forgot it was a ram, um, but ram specifically. But yeah, it's kind of like, why would that thing not be put down? You're the president of the United States. It, I could not imagine that happening today. If that happened today, there would be problems, clearly. But different time, I guess, and or maybe he just really cared about the ram. But it probably should have just put it down, probably.
Jefferson just had it moved back to Monticello. It was eventually put down, but only after it single-handedly killed several other rams at the estate, which just goes to show how Jefferson operated. Random child, not the best optics, but that can be forgiven. But my own property, that's a bridge too far, Rambo. John
Well, we know how. I guess he saw others. Yeah, that's not a good look there, Jefferson. It's not a good look there. But looking back, you can laugh at it. It's not great. It's pretty terrible, really. But it's one of those like haha funny, not really funny, but kind of funny things. So, well, I guess his own property matters a little bit more.
Quincy Adams' wife Louisa practiced sericulture, which is a fun word for silkworm keeping. As a side note, sericulture has been going on since at least 3630 BC, which is kinda nutty, because that means we domesticated worms to turn their goo into clothes before we figured out how to ride a horse. Jackson had an African gray parrot named Poll, short for Polly, that would
Now we're about to get into the parrot that I was talking about, but silkworms. What an interesting thing. I mean, yeah, like he said, we've had silkworms for a long time. I know the Chinese, it was very famous. There's very famous silk. I mean, that was silkworms. Um, the Silk Road and all that a lot of us here in America learn about. So it's not that surprising, really, especially with a country like China that has history going back 4,000 plus years. So it's weird, I will say, to think that they had those in the White House, but not that crazy, really, in the grand scheme of things.
apparently cursed like a sailor, probably thanks to the teachings of Old Hickory himself.
Oh,
Having
yeah,
outlived
definitely.
its owner, Paul ended up being removed from Jackson's funeral service after unleashing so much profanity that guests found it genuinely upsetting. He also kept roosters for cockfighting, which was acceptable at the time and still far from the worst thing he's done morally. During Van Buren's term, the Sultan of Oman sent a variety of
Yeah, definitely not the worst thing. I would say that cockfighting is probably one of the lower things on the list. The things that Jackson did that were pretty messed up. Even back then, he was kind of probably considered a little bit of a not so nice guy. Uh, but he was president, I guess.
gifts to the president, among them being a pair of tiger cubs. He was
That
like,
could be
this is
right.
badass, and desperately wanted to keep them in the White House. But the dickheads in Congress asserted that, due to a specific constitutional provision, gifts to the presidential office weren't for the man himself, but for the people. Van Buren said, fuck the people, them's my tigers, and got into a legal battle with the legislator over the issue, which he eventually lost. The tigers were subsequently sent to a zoo, and over 20 years later, Van Buren died of pneumonia, completely unrelated to this incident. Although Andrew Johnson had no de jure pets, he did befriend a family of mice he found.
Okay, well, we're about to get into something really weird with one of the worst presidents. But that's tigers, and I mean, I guess they are technically for the people. I mean, that's what the government was based on. It's just so weird to think like, oh yeah, we'll just put them in a zoo. He must have really liked the tigers. He must have thought they were adorable and been like, this is the greatest gift ever. But yeah, no, that's weird.
In his bedroom, feeding them flour and grain and referring to them as the little fellows. It's an oddly wholesome thing to hear from someone who essentially set the trajectory for the next 100 years of black disenfranchisement. Mr. Johnson, we still have a country to rebuild. Get out of my room!
Yeah, definitely. I would consider one of the worst presidents ever. I mean, he never even should have been president, but it is what it is. It's pretty awful. He led things down a path that were not great. Um, one of the worst for the history of America, but nothing's perfect in this world, and this is one of those moments. It wasn't perfect, but it happens.
I'm getting rat pilled. Taft had two cows during his term. The first of them was named Mooly Wooly, and she died a year and a half in after, quote, eating too many oats. Mooly was promptly replaced by the far more dignified Pauline Wayne. She was a real dime of a heifer, which led Taft to show her off at the International Dairymen's Expo in Milwaukee. In order to get her there, she was transported in a private car attached to a train headed for the stockyards in Chicago. But a switch crew mixed up which car was hers, leading to 2 days of frantic telegraphs asking where the president's cow had gone. She only narrowly avoided the slaughterhouse when a couple of
Lucky for Taft, yeah, that she could have easily ended up in the slaughterhouse. I, how do you get the president's prized cow mixed up at all? I I don't know. Like I think the idea that that could even happen is ridiculous. Like holy crap, that would have been that they would have had hell to pay probably.
Attendants at the stockyard recognized Pauline for what she was, and all was well. This next one requires a little
At least they
background
recognized
info.
her.
So the traditional Thanksgiving dinner was and remains a significant yearly ceremony for the first family. For half a century, from 1873 to 1913, the duty of providing the presidential turkey belonged to one Horace Vose, a private turkey farmer based in Rhode Island. After his death, though, things turned into a free-for-all, with numerous farmers sending unsolicited
That guy must have had like the business of a lifetime. They must have really. He must have been friends. I don't know if Sam will get into this. Um, I'll do a little research right here. I won't bring it up because yeah, but look it up right now. He said his name was good old Horace Vose. Let's see here. Horace Vose, Poultry King. Westerly on Rhode Island, national figure. Vose began raising turkey with his uncle in the mid 1850s, and in 1873 sent a splendid Meleagris Galapavo to President Ulysses Grant, beginning the tradition. Okay, so it started with Grant. Interesting. And he just decided to send it to the president, and that's how it started. So that's cool though, that a tradition was basically started because just a simple guy was like, "Hey, Mr. President, here's a turkey from our farm. I hope you enjoy it." And the president just so happened to like that and continue the tradition until the man passed.
Island. After his death, though, things turned into a free-for-all, with numerous farmers sending
As they would,
unsolicited
yeah.
turkeys, both alive and dead, in an attempt to secure a position as the next annual caterer
yeah,
for the
and
White
it's very
House. Nobody
special.
was decided on for a decade, and upon assuming office in 1923, Calvin Coolidge found the volume of birds showing up at his doorstep alarming, and put an end to the tradition that year, instead opting to buy his own turkey. But in 1925, after much outside pressure, he caved, and was immediately flooded with not only turkey, but a variety of
He sent all of these for real, or is this just Sam goofing and gaffing? Because yeah, poor Calvin Coolidge. He was like, "I'll just buy my own turkey. It's whatever." And then he caves, and then he gets this nightmare.
increasingly exotic animals to eat. Among them
Oh,
was a live raccoon he received the
what?
following year. Coolidge was, at the time, blissfully unaware of the intricate dance performed on the palate between forward yet ephemeral gaminess and heady seductive musk when one submits himself to the experience of a toothsome raccoon fillet, and as such he decided to keep it as a pet instead. Dubbed Rebecca, the creature
That he that raccoon is so lucky it was brought to him live. He was like, "I'm not eating that thing," and then, well, he had a pet raccoon. Not actually that uncommon. There's a lot of people that have them around where I'm from. It's not that uncommon to see people with like their wild pets kind of thing. It's pretty common, honestly, where I'm from.
soon came to be a core member of the Coolidge family. She ate as well as any of them, being fed things like shrimp and persimmons, and she was particularly fond of eggs. Given free
Eggs?
reign over the
Okay.
house, Rebecca's hobbies reportedly included unscrewing light bulbs, uprooting
Okay.
houseplants, and playing with wet bars of soap.
It can What I want to know is how did a raccoon unscrew a light bulb? I know they can like hold things with their little hands, but like I've just never seen them that dexterous. I mean, I'm sure it could do it. Like the other two, yeah, sure. Uprooting plants. I think any pet could really do that. Besides like a pet rock, but and then playing with soap, I could see that still. Yeah,
In the bathtub.
light
She was
bulbs.
so beloved that she even had her own treehouse built for her in the White House yard. When the Coolidges made way for the Hoovers, Rebecca was forced to vacate her post, but the new first family soon found that they had a squatter on their hands. The new tenant of Rebecca's treehouse was a wild opossum who, rather than being evicted, was adopted by the Hoovers and
I've never heard someone pronounce it a possum. We just say possum, but um, they can be really nice animals. They're actually real. They can be really friendly. Now, if they have babies, do not approach them. They will they will attack. But like, it's interesting the pets that they had. Coolidge getting a free raccoon and just had it as his pet, and now now the Hoovers have a squatter.
Similar fashion to Rebecca, albeit from a farther distance, mostly just saying, yeah, that's ours now. He was given the name Billy Possum, which is a reference to our old friend Taft. See,
Good old Billy Possum.
as the man following Teddy Roosevelt in the White House, Taft had some big shoes to fill. So during his term, some enterprising young dumbasses approached Taft with what they claimed would be the sequel to the teddy bear. They called it Billy Possum, which is itself a reference to the president's fondness of possum and taters, a dish he famously requested at a banquet in Atlanta as an act of goodwill towards the South and its culture. Taft found the idea amusing enough that he gave the green light, and many thousands of Billy Possums were produced. Given their total obscurity today, it's clear these toys were a massive flop, and there's a
Oh yeah, clearly. I've never even heard of this. Billy Possum just doesn't have the same name, like ring, I think, as Teddy Bear. Because like Teddy Bear just kind of it has a certain ring to it. Where like Billy Possum, it just doesn't. I think it's because it's something about just the Teddy part, really, of Teddy Bear. And Billy Possum. It's probably also because it's a possum. People don't really like possums. They think they're gross. Whereas bears, people think they're kind of scary, but they also think they're kind of cute, depending on the bear.
few reasons for that. For one, trying to force fads at all is like trying to push water uphill, but also, the story of Roosevelt refusing to shoot a tied-up bear has a bit more symbolic poetry to it than, it's a possum cause he like possum, he a fat boy, eat him up good. Couple that with the constant character assassination that the opossum as an animal has received from ignorant urbanites, and it becomes obvious that this thing was doomed from
Yeah, possums have been just like ridiculed in all this. They are not filthy. They're not really diseased, and they're not really rabid. If I remember correctly, they are one of the animals that is like the least rabid. They eat ticks. Um, they keep themselves very clean. So I don't know where this came from, and he said urbanites, so a lot of people in cities, but like still, I don't know where this idea came from. Possums are great. They can be a little mean, don't get me wrong, but I don't think there's anything wrong with them. They're fine, especially the eating ticks part. With how bad ticks are, it's nice to have some possums around.
the start. But anyway, that's where the Hoover opossum got his name, and his exploits were pretty limited outside of temporarily filling in as a mascot of a local high school. In 1961, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev gifted a dog to the Kennedys, named Pushinka, or Fluffy, and while it is normally rude to look a gift dog in the mouth, an exception can be made when the single biggest threat to the free world insists that said dog should live with the president. Pushinka was x-rayed, put through metal detectors, and given ultrasounds out of fear that someone implanted her with a listening device. Fortunately, though there may be bugs in some of you mugs, there ain't no bugs in she, and Pushinka remained a Kennedy.
That's a nice gesture then, I guess. Yeah, I would totally see 60s or 50s United States going, we got to search this thing through thick and thin because we're going to find out if it has anything on it. But it didn't, which is a nice little turn of events.
For the rest of her days. While truthfully, the gift was likely given as a simple act of good faith designed to reduce Cold War tensions, Pushinka was also the daughter of Strelka, who, during Sputnik 5, became the first mammal to make it back from space alive. So I'd like.
Oh, that's really cool, actually. Like, that's really cool. I mean, if it might have been it's a lot of times during the Cold War where they did try to lower tensions. It didn't always work, and it did heat up again for a Cold War. It heated up quite a bit. But if it was a genuine act of like, hey, let's try to, you and me, let's try to work it out. That's a nice gesture. But it could also have been a one-up. Be like, hey, look, is our Space Dogs pup.
I like to think of it as more of a passive-aggressive space race flex.
Yeah,
like, yeah, our astronanimals are so alive, they're making babies even. Hope looking at this one constantly reminds you of where you stand. With that, I hope you found this highlight reel enlightening. It feels good to know that while Congress has always been a zoo, so too has the White House at times. That's all for today. Till next time, I'm Sam Minella, and you make my girlhood tremble.
Okay, Sam. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. Another great video from Sam. It's always funny watching some of his videos. He's always got a way of using his
Here's
words.
one thing you need to do before buying any.
We're not gonna watch any more of that. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for watching and like and subscribe and all that stuff. I'll see you in the next one.